Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Celebrating Resilience, Queer and Two-Spirit Indigenous Narratives. I'm Catherine Ploufjeté with the Canadian Women's Foundation, and I'm going to get us started and hand it off to our panelists next. First things first, the work of the Canadian Women's Foundation and that of its programs we support take place on traditional First Nations, Métis, and Inuit territories. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet and work on this land. However, we recognize that land acknowledgements are not enough. We need to pursue truth, reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship in an ongoing effort to make right with all of our relations. If you don't know about us, the Canadian Women's Foundation is a national leader in the movement for gender equality in Canada. Through funding, research, advocacy, and knowledge sharing, we work to achieve systemic change. We support girls, women, and gender diverse people to move out of violence, out of poverty, and into confidence and leadership. Some technical details. If you haven't already, please click the interpretation option at the bottom of your screen and select the language channel. We have interpreters working today to make sure everyone's words are translated. So please now select English or select French from the options to ensure a seamless experience for you. In addition, we do have ASL and LSQ live interpretation provided as well. ASL and LSQ interpreters will be spotlighted and pinned on your Zoom screen. There is also captioning available today in both French and English. English live captioning will directly show up on your Zoom screen once you click the captioning icon on your end. If you would like to access French live captioning, please follow the link posted in the chat. If you have questions, please type them into the Q&A box during the event. We will monitor this box and pause your question at the end of the session, doing our best to get to as many as possible. And if you're having any tech issue, feel free to use the Q&A and we'll do our best to assist you. Finally, at the end of the event, there will be a survey available. Please take your time. Please take the time to give your feedback if you can. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to Angela Lavalle. Angela Lavalle is a First Nation woman, mother, grandmother, sun dancer, and graduate from the University of Winnipeg, Bachelor of Art program majoring in conflict resolution and criminal justice. She obtained her master's in social work, Indigenous trauma and resilience through the University of Toronto. Angela is an active community member currently residing in Winnipeg. She holds place for people who need healing and trauma support. Thank you so much, Angela, for being here today. I'll let you do the opening. Thank you.
And say welcome. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And I want to acknowledge the land that I'm on. I am on Treaty 1 territory located in Winnipeg, Manitoba, the ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dakota, Dene, and Ojibwe Cree, and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I also want to acknowledge how my ancestors connect with your ancestors in this format, in this place of being, that everybody who is witness to this today, that we somehow are connected in a space beyond what we can see, but a feeling of connection. I would love to begin by opening the hearts of people who cannot be here and find a way to, our thoughts and our ways of being, to offer some supports that they may not be able to see, but prayers always have a way of entering space and holding space and feeling. I wanted to acknowledge the courage and the strength of our queer and two-spirit Indigenous folks in many of our communities, and also acknowledge the ones who haven't had the opportunity to be, in spaces that are safe and where they could be held and, walking in a way that's true to who they are. The opening that I would like to begin with, and with respect to decolonization, is holding this medicine. I have sage in front of me with some cedar, and the importance of that medicine and how it grounds us. And what I have learned as an Indigenous woman, and with respect to my spirit name, Neo Kuku Iskwao, for grandmother's woman, is that the medicine, that connection that we have to Mother Earth and all the beautiful gifts that she provides to us as human beings, that we find comfort in picking up that medicine and learning how it balances our mind, body, and spirit. What I learned about sage is it's a cleansing medicine. It's identified as a woman's medicine, where we are embodying that energy of being able to harvest it, being able to utilize it in a way where we pick it up when we feel good. We pick it up to open and cleanse in a way that offers release. The cedar medicine is also what I've learned to be a cleansing medicine in many different ways. And I honor anything that, if anything that is said today by me, or by by our beautiful, amazing speakers, that you hold space within yourself to accept and receive what feels good for you. And anything that is said that may not feel good for you, I offer, the invitation to set that down, to set it down with the empowerment of knowing you don't have to hold it, that there's an activation there, with the understanding that somebody who is witnessing this today is holding on to what may have not felt good for you, but is healing for them. That's medicine for them, that's activating something within them. So this medicine, I invite you to feel the energy of it as I light it. And from what I've learned about medicine, is the moment that we light the match, the fire, and we set it there, it's activated. And my intentions with the prayers, with the feeling of it, is this is my relationship with the medicine, with my relationship with Mother Earth, as I move it over my mouth, to offer beautiful words, to also give me moments of where hurt may come out, and that's okay, and that's honored, to hear the beautiful things in the world. And if I hear things that are challenging, that I find peace and learning through that, to see the beauty, to feel that in my heart, feeling that movement, and also to transfer some of that beautiful medicine through my hair. And I invite you, if this isn't for you, that's okay too. This is a place and a space where you take what you need, pick up what feels good, and set aside what doesn't. And knowing that we have a beautiful moment to be together and practice that breath work, breathing in and breathing out. Miigwech, ekose. So that that medicine is burning. I feel it, and I hope in some way that you feel it too. And if you have your medicines around you, I invite you to pick those up. They're beautiful ways to open your part of who you are. And as that medicine is offering some grounding, I would love to introduce our speakers for today. And I would like to begin by introducing Summer. And Summer, I could say I have, some notes in front of me that are going to guide me, but there's also the spirit of Summer that I've had the opportunity to learn about her in a different capacity. I could go on and on and on, and because of time, I will stick with what's in front of me. So it's such a pleasure to introduce Summer. She's a queer two-spirit Anishinaabe and I'm sorry, Summer, you can correct this. Kiashke Zagig Anishinaabe Gull Bay First Nation, located in northwestern Ontario. They will be going into their second year of law school in the fall at the University of Victoria in the Joint Degree Program in Canadian Common Law and Indigenous Legal Orders. She is a multidisciplinary artist with experience in painting, beading, podcasting, traditional hand drumming, creative writing, and fancy shawl dancing. Summer utilizes art as a way to connect with their Anishinaabe culture, to heal, and to express spirit. I've also witnessed Summer being a very gentle leader to younger people and, creating beautiful pathways. I'd like to also introduce Elizabeth Diane LaBelle. Diane holds the position of Regional Education Advisor for the First Nations Adult Education School Council. Diane has over 35 years experience in the world of education as a teacher, consultant, administrator, and presenter, and holds a master's degree in political science, a graduate diploma in education, and another in special education through McGill University, as well as a management certification from the University of Toronto. Diane has been an activist for the rights of Two-Spirit people since 1976. As a person of knowledge and a researcher, Diane is frequently invited to speak on the issue. Sorry, there's the French part in there, my apologies. In May, Diane presented the results of one of her research projects on this population to the International Gathering of the Dignity Network Canada and the Minister of Crown Aboriginal Relations, the Honorable Gary Ananans Anagri. I would love to, invite both of them to introduce themselves as we're moving into the panel, and make that space and give that moment for them to maybe correct what I have said wrong, but also to include what I may have missed. And we could begin with Summer.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon from wherever you're zooming in from. I'm gonna just introduce myself in my own language, Anishinaabe, and I'll translate after. Kuju, anang kwe Indigenous Kiash Saging Anishinaabe, Nindonjaba, Mikizi Minawa Awasi Nindodem. So I just said, hello everybody, my traditional name is Star Woman, and I'm originally from Gull Bay First Nation. That's my reserve, but I grew up in the city in Thunder Bay, Ontario, and my clans are Catfish and Eagle. And I'm currently zooming in from Lukwanin, Esquimalt, and Wasanich territories here on Victoria Island. And I am a grateful guest here. So yeah, I guess what Angel had said, I'm a student, so I'll be going into my second year of law school, and this is a pathway I've been wanting to pursue for a while. I think I was probably 12 when I knew I wanted to go to law school. Yeah, and I'm also an artist. I do beading, painting, singing, hand drumming, fancy shawl dancing, poetry, and of course, podcasting. That is how I got involved with the Canadian Women's Foundation through the Indigenous Health Hub. I was a youth facilitator and was able to guide an amazing experience with some other Indigenous youth, and those are available and you can check those out on the website. What else? I don't know, just happy Pride and happy Indigenous Peoples Month, I guess, and I'll leave it at that. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you, Summer. Diana, I'd like to, if you could also introduce yourself and tell us how you identify, and maybe you could also share with everybody about the Indigiqueer Circle of Quebec.
Thank you very much, Angela, for giving me the chance to speak and also for agreeing to be the holder of our energy for this time period. My name is Elizabeth Diana Bell, and I am of mixed heritage. I am coming to you from Haudenosaunee land here, the land of the Kanien'kehá:ka. My primary identity actually is as a mother to 4 wonderful adults and to 6 absolutely fantastic grandchildren. So for all of you who have not reached grandparenthood, wait, it is the total payoff. I love it. It is the best stage of my life. In my professional career, I've spent many of my years in education, but as we know, education is everything. And so I have a very open idea about what constitutes education. And I have spent a lot of time developing Indigenous specific programming for the different nations here in the region they call Quebec now. And I thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to sit with elders and other people, knowledge keepers and communities who tell me about the history of their nations, their communities, and what needs they have, and then to be entrusted, to be able to develop programming for them to assure that those needs are met. And so I'm so totally honored to be able to be doing this work, so much so that I have yet to even think about, retiring. So it's so much fun. I've also, in the process of this, have maintained a great deal of time in looking at the issue of two-spiritedness, the impacts of colonization on Indigenous communities, and how it has caused a change in values, where in some communities we see people being rejected instead of being accepted and welcomed into the circle. And sadly, Two-Spirit people have suffered that as a result of colonization, the imposition of residential schools, and some religious values that maintain a binary gender system. And so I spent a great deal of time trying to educate people about the reality, the history of two-spiritedness, and the history of colonization and the impact of colonization, and how that has made its way into our communities. And for going on 40 years, I've been trying to also bring two-spirited people in this area, people called Quebec, together in order to work as a unit to be able to change things and to do some healing in our communities. And last year, finally had the opportunity to sit with representatives from 9 out of the 11 nations here, and we put together, or we began what we call le Cercle Autochtone, officially le Cercle Autochtone d'ES LGBTQ. That's the only title that the Quebec government would allow us to have, but we call it Cercle Indigiqueer Circle. And it is a regional organization trying to serve the needs of the Two-Spirit community, not only in communities, but also in the urban areas. And that involves a great deal of listening and putting together programming, contact, communication, attending sessions like this in order to listen, to learn, and to continue to do the work that we do. Even though we're designated for Quebec, we do not recognize those boundaries. So we try to meet the needs wherever we can.
Thank you for sharing that, Diane. That's vital and empowering work as well. Summer, all of the work that you're doing. So we're going to begin by going through a series of some beautiful questions to help us create a foundation on the discussion. Before we begin, one of the first question is to please introduce yourself and how you identify. And we've covered that piece. I wanted to open that space, Summer, for you, if you are comfortable to share how you identify. I know there's the one word that's utilized, queer. What does that feel like? What's that feeling of identity for you when you share that word?
Yeah, for sure. I realized I kind of missed that part in my introduction. So thanks for reminding me. So yeah, I think first, I'm an Anishinaabe Kwe. So as an Anishinaabe woman would be the translation, but Kwe, which could translate as woman to English, doesn't translate very well. Kwe, for me, has always encompassed Two-Spirit folk in our language. And Anishinaabe doesn't have a lot of pronouns, actually, so it's something I've adapted to, and that's primarily why I feel like I identify as Two-Spirit or Nij Manitou in my own language. I think that's how I feel the most fitting. But I have become comfortable with identifying as queer. I know that there's an era in history where that was a slur and that was a really tough word to hear. But I feel like I've reclaimed it and I feel comfortable identifying as that. I would say, bisexual, I'm comfortable with that too. And for me, bisexual has also always included genders of myself and other genders. So, trans, non-binary folk are also people that is included in there. So I think, yeah, primarily identify as a Two-Spirit, queer, and Anishinaabe Kwe. And that's what feels comfortable for me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Summer. And thank you as well, Diane, for sharing, thank you for both for sharing those sacred parts of who you are. And it's empowering, inspiring. We often, when we're moving into those places, we're mentored. Are there somebody that activates something within side of us to move in that direction? Who have been some of your role models or Indigenous queer, Two-Spirit people you look up to? You both do such important work, and somebody that has activated, that part of you to come forward in that beautiful way. And either one of you can share and start, and also know you don't have to. And if something else activates where you want to share something else, that space is open for that.
In the time period in which I grew up, I did not have many role models around me, and it always caused a great deal of pain and confusion. There was always the absence of individuals who could share their knowledge with me and to be able to assure me that I was fine and that I was not this aberration, right? In my younger adulthood, however, my partner and I, we've been together for 34 years now. We had the pleasure and the benefit of meeting some Two-Spirit elders as we joined in on the international Two-Spirit gatherings. And so they became very important to me. So elders like Sylvia Miracle, who has spent her life doing a great service to Indigenous people as in terms of governance and putting forward our concerns first and foremost, or issues, but also on the two-spirit level, and always making sure that two-spiritedness is included in all the work that she does. And she has also worked very hard on the reports having to do with missing and murdered women and two-spirit. Of course, Albert McLeod, love Albert. Wonderful sense of humor, wonderful person to get you to laugh at yourself, as well as to teach you some really wonderful things that we do need to know. I've also have to shout out to Sheila Nyman from out west, and the work that she does in terms of womanhood and channeling energy and bringing back birthing traditions. I think that's very, very crucial. Blue Waters from Ontario, who also has been pushing in some ways for different things. And so each of those elders have given me opportunity to learn. Clearly, it's not a full list. Marjorie Voltage, I mean, they're just wonderful two-spirit elders. But it's from watching them work with the youth that I think is exceptional. The ability to tend to just hand, to reach out with their hand. I've flipped into French there, but to just, you know, extend a hand to them, simply to normalize. Yes, you're in pain. Yes, you are facing all of these barriers, but know that you are okay and that you are special. And then to begin the teachings and show them how special and the history that they come from and why they are there, and helping them to connect when they do return to communities. And I think that it's crucial that those elders be there all the time. I am sad to say that, you know, we don't always have those in our individual nations or communities, and hope, because the elders have grown in that period of you hide your difference. It's not, it wasn't something positive, and therefore having to stay in the background and in the closet. And even as we grow older and things change, it's still, you know, with that tendency to hold back is there, and you have to work a great deal on that. So I'm hoping that at some point we're going to have more two-spirited elders being present for the younger generations here in the eastern part. There's some wonderful ones as well out east, and in Tubayang, absolutely wonderful Mi'kmaq elder. So yeah, it's there's a lot out there.
Thank you, Diane. Summer, did you want to share?
For sure. Yeah, when I first thought about this question, immediately who came to mind were like my friends, and I'm not going to name them, but I just want to shout them out because they've been there for me for so many things. And I really relate to what Diane said, that, you know, growing up, even the generations that separate us, I didn't have, you know, a lot of people I looked up to, and I really wish I could name family members, and I know that doesn't mean they're not there. And, you know, I'm sure there are people that are queer and that are doing the good work, but I'm not familiar with them, or I haven't been in touch with them. And, you know, that's a part of the reason why it's been so important for me to speak out and be proud of my identity. So other youth in my community can ask me those questions, or I can be a role model for them. But yeah, my friends were someone. So when I moved away from home, Thunder Bay, Ontario could be like, you know, a closed-minded space at times. So when I moved to the big city of like Vancouver, so-called Vancouver, BC, you know, it was a lot more open, it was a lot more diverse. And when I went to UBC in my undergrad, I got to meet other people like me, other queer, two-spirit, trans people who really inspired me, and they were so confident and proud with how they identified. And, you know, we attended queer events and workshops and spaces that celebrated us, that really like healed a piece of my inner child. So it's a big shout out to a few core queer people who I'm still in touch with today. And they're just always unapologetically themselves and they own it. So, you know, I soaked up that confidence. That was huge. And I'm always learning so much from them. In terms of other role models, I think about in the Indigenous queer community, Billy Ray Belcourt, who is an amazing queer Cree author, scholar, icon. I had him as a professor at UBC for poetry, but even before that, I had read almost all of his works, and particularly his memoir inspired me a lot. Just reading it made me like not feel alone. And I was like, where was this when I was like 12, 13? Like, I really needed this kind of literature. So shout out Billy Ray. I think everybody should go read his work. And also another professor of mine, Daniel Heath Justice, who is an open queer prof at UBC. I witnessed him just create safe spaces for myself and other students, and always spoke very kindly and softly and super empathetic and compassionate, and was actually one of my references for law school, and just said nothing but kind words about me. So I really shout out him. And then just two others who I've recently got to know in the past year, two elders, is Noreen Braun and Bonaventure. I was able to do a workshop with them, which I'll talk a little bit more later. And it was really nice to be able to connect with them and learn a lot about their experiences and their journey and all that they shared as well to the youth that were in our workshop. I just know that that space was super magical and healing for a lot of people that were there. So yeah, I think, oh yeah, and Bonaventure also has like a two-spirit sweat lodge out in Vancouver, which is really awesome. And they're just doing really good work. So I think those are a few of the people that I look up to and who are my role models, but I know there's probably so much more, but yeah.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Diane. Yeah, and you know, there are so many, I love how you brought up role models, role modeling each other, as well as the importance of having knowledge keepers and knowledge learners who are gentle, and Albert being one of them, and Charlotte Nolan out here. And yesterday, you know, I was remembered, my grandchild is trans, you know, identifies as gender diverse, one day a boy, one day a girl. And we went for a ride and these are 10 and 11-year-olds, 10 and 11-year-olds. And it reminded me of all the work that you're doing, those pathways that you're creating, because they were having a conversation and I was listening, and they were talking about another person who wasn't in the vehicle, and my grandchild turned around and they're like, well, what do they identify as? Are they lesbian? And the other little girl in the back, no, they're pan. So you know, they're having these conversations. So these are the pathways that you're creating, and to have each other, it's essential to have those places. So thank you for sharing that. So what is one thing, and I know when we think of one thing, because we have so many, that you want youth who are navigating their identity to know? And what is one thing that if you can sit with them, that you would want them to know?
Yeah, I like how you phrased the question, Angela, and it makes me think of, like, I know that that's your background, but like counseling or therapy, like, what would you say to your little child, your child self? And I think for me, and to say this to other youth who are, you know, navigating their identity, is that you are loved. I know it sounds so simple, but it's not, you know, especially for Indigenous peoples with, you know, the trauma of residential schools, the 60 scoop, everything. it's not said enough. And, you know, even though you can feel that sometimes, like if there's food on the table or if they put you in a sport, I know that that is love and there's shades of love, but, you know, we need to feel it and we need to hear it and we need those hugs. And, you know, so I guess my advice is to families who maybe have queer children and whoever is just to let them shine and never try to dim their light and that they are loved no matter what and accepted. I think after I did end up coming out with my dad and everything, he just gave me a big hug and said, you know, I'm going to love you no matter what. And it was so touching. And he was the person I was the most afraid of to come out to because, you know, there's some patriarchy, some views, some things he said where I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be a safe space. But for him to do that was, yeah, I think just saying that you are loved is really important. I got the other other practical advice is, you know, Google is your friend for advice, but also like real friends, taking joy in creating your community, finding those safe people who you can let your walls down. Being lonely is something I really struggled with, and like my mental health is huge, especially for a lot of queer people navigating their identity, especially if you live in a small town or like a reserve with a lot of closed-mindedness or Christianity or homophobia. So just finding those little pockets where you can be yourself is really important. And maybe just knowing that it's going to take time, like be patient with yourself. You're not going to have all the answers right away and you're not going to be confident right away, but it'll come. And to explore, like don't shy away from testing boundaries with yourself while, you know, while respecting others' boundaries too and being safe while doing so. But I'm a huge advocate for more queer sexual health and education. I didn't get any of that, and it's needed. So just knowing that too. And, you know, clothes have no gender. Literally wear whatever you want, look cool doing it. There's no such thing as being overdressed. That's a myth. I feel this in regalia too. You know, some communities are slowly adjusting to not having such binary dance categories. You know, I've seen two-spirit specials and powwows. So yeah, just be you and you're loved.
Thank you, Summer. It was really beautiful. Diane, did you want to share?
Yeah, there's two things that I wanted to share. The first thing, and I really appreciate what you said, Summer, that's, you know, you're exactly right, that there's many different sources of pain and barriers and walls that are there. And our fear of being able to be ourselves is mitigated by the extent to which we are exposed to that on a daily basis, and the extent to which other people are willing to challenge themselves in terms of their ideas. And often in small communities, we have a tendency to do what we know and to not venture out. And I think that that's again part of the colonization legacy is, you know, stick to the script, stay within the lines, don't make any trouble, don't stick your head up, don't call attention to yourself. You know, these are all the things that, you know, have been passed down to us. But the idea is that this dysfunction, and I'll quote my adopted mother for this, saying that the solution to all of this dysfunction is connection. And so connecting not just to self, but connecting to friends, connecting to other people who are not within this negativity around us, right? To be aware of the negativity for safety reasons, but at the same time to move beyond that to other people and trust that there are other forms of connection and support that are out there. Just to be able to use the internet, not necessarily to just gain all your information, but to gain information on contacts and groups. It's a wonderful tool to make sure that it's there. Something we didn't have, right? So when we were growing up, for young or older people like me, And just to be able to have a conversation on a level of being real and talking about similar things and different things as well, so that there's that sharing that happens. So you don't feel alone, right? Because that's how it feels when you're not surrounded by others in your community who are out and who are trying to live their lives. And so to avoid feeling alone, I would say you're not alone, and try to find those connections. The second thing that I'd like to say is something that I was taught very early on. And I think credit to my my ability to withstand a lot of things that have happened in my life. And that is your spirit. You are spirit. You are not a body. The body is simply the container. You are spirit, and your spirit has no gender. And so to remember that those who have lost connection with that idea of spirit, and that everything is, that's the source of identity.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Summer. Thank you for sharing those sacred parts of who you are and planting that medicine in those spaces. It's essential to, as I sit here as a grandmother to my grandchild, if I had to express something that, I want youth to know, and I want their supports to know, please correct us. Please, if you feel the energy of, I might be saying something wrong, I always invite the space for my grandchild to correct me, to always correct me if I'm doing something, because I'm learning with them. And we need to create spaces for people to be able to, especially our young people, they have so many gifts within them that they have knowledge too. So please correct us. I would love to, when you were talking about all of that stuff, there's always something there, whether it be somebody, a system that shuts that down, that shuts spirit down, that shuts that identity down. It holds you back. There's challenges. If you wanted to share a challenge or something that has shut that part of who you are down, and give some kind of perspective and that feeling, so then people don't feel alone, they might be feeling it too. So, and either one of you could begin if you want to share.
I'd like to share something that it's just happened in the last day or so. We are in the process of getting ready for our second annual Pride here in Kahnawake, so Pride March or parade. It was very difficult last year to get it all organized and get people on board, and there was a lot of pushback also from people in the community who were afraid of what that would mean, and some of it founded, some of it not founded. But we got through it, and I thought this year it would be a little easier in some ways, and to be able, once you've done it, then people see that it's that you don't have to worry about all those other things. And I was really impressed actually with how it went last year, despite threats and whatever. However, I got all of us were shared a message yesterday from one of the organizers, in which it was a horrible thing to read. So filled with anger and hatred and homophobic, but beyond that, to the point where there were physical threats that were made. And it just brought to mind the fact that, oh my God, it's not as safe as we would like ourselves to believe. I mean, we have a two-spirit Grand Chief. You'd think that the community would be open. And we'd like to say we're open and we're fine and we're accepting and everything, but here is the reality, is that there is still a population of people in the community who are just so repulsed by anybody who doesn't fit within that binary. So it tells me, okay, we got a lot of healing to do. The colonization has really made its impact, and all that. But what was beautiful was to see the amount of response that came from the community. And the following comments and messages that were amazing from people who everywhere in the community, and then specific postings that were made by some organizations to say we support our Two-Spirit community members, or we support gender difference, we support, everyone is human, everyone is, included, everyone is, and we're for everyone kind of thing. And so it was one, heartbreaking and shocking to see, oh my God, the threat is still there. And still, like, it's like, wow, look at this. It really brought people together. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done out there, and more on the healing from, what has happened and how our thoughts have been changed and our processing has changed. So.
Summer, did you want to share?
Sure. So nothing for me is super recent, but when I did think of this question, the challenge was the first 18 years of my life, like when I was back home where I lived. I really just didn't feel like it was a town or a space that I could be myself. So I had to kind of be a watered down version for so long. And, I think I knew who I was when I was probably 8. And where I started asking those questions to myself, and I was like, what is this? What is gender? Why is this happening? And why do I have to come out or do anything like that? And I don't know. I just had all those questions so young. So to know so young, and then to also just hide for so long, like, hurt. It took a toll on myself emotionally. You know, and I think, my town is changing slowly, like a lot of communities are. But I think there still is this fear in me sometimes when I go back home. Like, I am proud of who I am, and I'm out, and on social media I identify as Two-Spirit queer, but not everyone's on social media. And when I go down my reserve, I don't know who's a safe person or not. So I think I do still kind of water myself down when I go back home and visit. I'll only pack certain clothes or something, or I'm not going to look too gay, or like, that's still a challenge for me, I think. But it's changing. I know that. And I do have, my family is really supportive, but that's still something in the back of my mind. And I guess something else is, like, I never want to take up too much space is something I think about, like recognizing, I am queer and Two-Spirit, and I am in a queer relationship. My partner is also queer. But both of us being bi, I think sometimes just on the out, it's like, oh, they're just a straight couple, and, we're not queer enough, and thinking about some of that nonsense. So it's some of my own internalizations to work through. And, I can be mostly like femme presenting, or just because my hair is long, people think that means femininity, but it doesn't. Like, this is my indigeneity. Like, I thought about cutting my hair, and I was like, no, like, these are my roots. This is who I am. I grow up from my ancestors. But yeah, just that piece. And, I'm also mixed ancestry too. My mom's Ukrainian, my dad's Anishinaabe. So I'm aware of that. And I always want to uplift and center other, maybe more visible, BIPOC, trans, non-binary, kin, disabled, other marginalized communities. Like, those lived experiences are also super important, and voices that we need to hear from. So yeah, those are just some challenges or setbacks.
Thank you both so much.
Can I just add
Oh,
one thing?
go ahead, Diane.
On the question of voices, thank you for saying that, is that we also have a lived experience of facing challenges every day. It's not the same, because just trying to be who we are seems to put people's backs up. But that doesn't mean that, we can ignore others who are facing difficulties as well. So I think it's important also as two-spirited people to make sure that we're also adding our voices to other situations of difficulties and other political situations that are not humanistic, that go against humanity, essentially. And often, like you said, we don't take too much space. But in essence, I really believe that as two-spirited people, we need to take more space. We need to break that invisibility. We need to make sure that we're included in everything, in all the discussions. And that when things are happening around the world or with other populations, that we stand up and that we speak loudly for them as well.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for sharing. And also to, I'm sorry that people have to experience this. And I know if Canadian Women's Foundation may be dropping some supports in the link, if anybody feels they need to reach out, there will be some space made for that. And knowing that you will be held up in some way, in a beautiful way, that our thoughts and our hearts are with you and the movement is happening. When we think about something that you're proud of, that you have accomplished, you have accomplished a lot that's centered and uplifting to the two-spirit queer identity. But what is something that, I could sit here and talk about what I visualize, what I see as a person looking in, but when you sit with yourself and you feel that sense of proud and knowing what you're doing, what's something that comes to heart or mind?
I can share. Yeah, so circling back to a workshop I did last year, I was accepted to be a BC Culture Days ambassador, which is essentially this like 3-week-long celebration of either free events or like pay what you can events, and centering like accessibility and all these things into like art and community. So I was to pitch an idea to be an ambassador, and I immediately, well, at first when I saw the ad on Instagram, it was like a person holding a drum, and I'm like, you know what, like I've had such the privilege and opportunity to have an amazing group of women that I drum with, called Rising Moon, and I've known them for the last 6 years now. They're all women though, they're all femmes, and I was like, we need more queer circle spaces for drumming and singing. Like that ceremony is so important, and I've seen what it's done for me and my voice and my healing. So I was like, I want to do a workshop. I think I have enough tools in my belt to do this and to get support from people to host this. So I pitched a two-spirit hand drumming song workshop for Indigenous youth, and I was accepted. And my event, you get a small budget, but it was doable. I think I even went over budget because, when you think about honorariums and gifting, that was some of my feedback to BC Culture Days, was to have that in mind for events like that, is like, we need a little bit more so we can support these people and continue to do good work. But yeah, that's how I got connected with queer Métis musician Noreen Braun. Check out her music, she's great. And it was so nice. We would just hang out, sit down, and I'd have like coffee or tea at her house, and she would just tell me stories. Sometimes it was us just chatting, and then we'd get into it to like making music or learning about songs, or she would teach me about composition and I would share some drum songs. And she ended up co-facilitating with me. I was like, I think it'd be really awesome if you were there, and she agreed. So I had this mentorship for a few months. I can't remember how many months. And then I think, last October rolled around, and we had over like 25 people register, and it was super awesome. I was going to provide food. It was going to be like a like a 10 to 3, you know, kind of a whole day thing on like a Saturday. And it was really awesome. I think only like 7 people showed up, but it was still so awesome. And it was like, you know, whoever's meant to be there was there, and it really was a ceremony. And, you know, Bonventure was also there, another elder who is that spiritual, cultural piece. So if anyone did have anything come up, that they could go to them and, you know, get support. So having that is also really important. Having someone people can go to if they need to get away for a minute. So yeah, this was the first kind of workshop I'd ever like facilitated or hosted, and it went really well. And we created an awesome two-spirit hand drum song. And, you know, maybe I can share it somewhere and, you know, but I think we need more spaces like that. We need more workshops. We need more things that just uphold queer two-spirit Indigenous youth. So for me to be able to put that on and to support other people on their journey, and, you know, some of these youth I'm still connected with, and they're like, oh, I'm learning this song, or, you know, thanks for this and for doing this. And I just, yeah, that made me feel really proud and want to do more things like that. And yeah, I just really like how it went, and it went super smoothly. It was, I was nervous, of course, but yeah, I think that's something that I've accomplished that I'm really proud of.
Thank you, Summer.
To add to that, Summer, I mean, one of the things, you're right, and you may get a email from me in the next little while, because there's something I'm organizing for August, and I think that would fit right in there. But it's, you know, what came up as well is the absence of the large drum as well for us. And so people from Indigenous were asking, you know, if there was a large drum, if we had a large drum, and whether or not we or had contact to have a large drum for an event that's happening. And it's really sad, you know, to say that, you know, my answer was we would have to contact these groups and see if they're open to the idea of being involved in a two-spirit event, because not all of those groups are open. But also is the fact that we don't have the two-spirit drum group, because people still stick to the big drum is a masculine thing, not a female thing, first of all. So if you're female presenting or in a female body, then, you know, you can't sit at the drum. And it's sort of, you know, it's just stuck in that binary right now. And so this is something I think that we do need to address, because music is crucial. It's our rhythm, it's our heart, it's a way of expression that we're being denied, like we are denied other kind of access to ceremony and things of that sort. So, but in terms of being proud, it's something that my partner and I decided to do early on when we had made the decision to have children. And we knew that hiding was not an option, that this would not be beneficial to our children, but also we wanted to continue to live within the community so that they would not lose that part as well. It was safe to do that outside the community, but not necessarily within the community. And we made the decision to have them be part of the community. And so we, and it was a conscious conversation that we would be out and open in the community as much as possible. And it wasn't always easy, because there was a lot of aggression that came our way, for sure. And as our children grew older, then we also realized that it wasn't so easy for them, because of some of the, you know, the pushback that they would get, you know, amongst their friends or schools and stuff like that. But what we did realize is that it had a positive impact when some of the youth later on told us that we were role models for them. And because we were present and we were visible, because we stayed within the community and we continued to be part of the community, that it gave them a sense of, I can do it too. And so, you know, in retrospect, we are both very proud of the fact that we had made that decision, as hard as it may have been. But it was, you know, it's wonderful to see now that so many more of the youth are actually coming out saying, yes, you know, this is me, I'm here, and I'm part of the community, and I'm a member, and I can do this, and, you know, I belong. So.
Migo Checo say for both of you know, those reminders and the realities and the beauty and that heartbeat of the drum has no gender, and that space should be circled around for everybody. I wanted to ask, and you know, as we move into the final kind of 8 minutes of the time we have slotted, you know, I was be really mindful of so we don't get cut off in that way. When we think about the ceremonies and the teachings and the accessibility to ceremonies and teachings, if you have them or not, what are your barriers to this? You know, we just spoke about the drum as a primary example. If there's anything more you wanted to share and offer for support and acknowledgement in that way, either one of you can start.
The only thing I can say is that, you know, and it's true that, you know, there's those who have been touched by the arrival of Europeans sooner, seem to have more of that resistance or more connection to this vision of the binary world system. And so we don't necessarily have an openness that is there. It's coming, it's developing as people are realizing that it's part of the losses. And so ceremonies might not be open necessarily here, but there are ceremonies elsewhere. And like a lot of nations, we've borrowed and shared from each other. There's specific nation ceremonies and things, but if you relate it, you can relate it to something also that you have. So there's a commonality of things that we share. It may not be done exactly the same, but we respect things and you know, but so it's a question of looking elsewhere and saying, okay, you know, can I find ceremony somewhere else? Or when you have organizations like IndigiQueer is doing, is to bring those ceremonies in, you know, so that at least there is that connection, right? And then to hopefully launch your own research into ceremony of your own nation, and give you the, you know, the strength and the support to do that, right? So if it's not there, search elsewhere first and then come back and apply it.
Just thinking about this. Yeah, I have had access to ceremony, and sometimes it has been more challenging than others. And I mean, just even being in a new city that I'm still navigating to find those safe spaces or the groups of people to do ceremony with, there's kind of that level of trust that needs to be built first that I'm always really aware of, getting to know people, their protocols before engaging any ceremony. So that's even just my advice is if you are going to go to a ceremony of some sort, to maybe ask around who these people are, what are their teachings. I think that's really important, so you don't just show up blindsided. I've had ceremonies where I've shown up to, and you know, I don't think anyone should be forced to wear anything or look a certain way. So, you know, I do have a few ribbon skirts, and sometimes there's a time and place, like being Two-Spirit. Sometimes I feel really feminine and powerful and I want to wear my skirt. Sometimes I wake up super mask and I'm like, ooh, the thought of wearing a skirt makes me want to throw up, and I shouldn't have to be forced to wear something. But I know there's a lot of lodge keepers and whatnot that do have those teachings that they have, and some of them are influenced by, you know, the church or colonialism. But yeah, just knowing that no one should ever be forced to wear anything. that they don't want to wear, that they're uncomfortable wearing, that doesn't honor their identity. And I kind of what to Diane said, I want to learn more about Two-Spirit roles in the Anishinaabe community. Like I said, I don't know any folks that are doing that work right now in my community, and who knows, maybe it's going to be me, but I need, you know, a knowledge keeper. I don't have all those knowledges right now. But it'd be really cool to learn about, you know, the history and the ceremonies. And from what I do know, a lot of Two-Spirit people, you know, we're those fire keepers, we're those leaders, and we're holding ceremony. So I can see, you know, in the next coming generations that it'll change slowly, but our people are gonna, you know, find their power again. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for, you know, planting that medicine. We have two more questions. You spoke briefly about your main support system. And if you want to share in one word or a sentence, an acknowledgement of your main support system, it's up to you.
I'll just say the land. You know, the land's not going to judge you. Go connect with the water. Prayer, smudging, just taking care of, that spirit is really important. And I think I do that best when I'm on the land or in the water. I always like to say water was my first genderless friend.
Yeah, internal balance. I think that constantly taking the pulse of where I am and how I'm feeling, and then being able to make corrections if I feel I need a little bit more here, a little bit more there. And because at night, that's who I go to bed with, right? Is me. And it's like I have to feel okay about me, you know, and that's important.
Thank you both so much for, you know, those empowering words and reminders. How could organizations like Canadian Women's Foundation better support queer and Two-Spirit Indigenous people?
Yeah, that's you know, there are many organizations out there, and I have to say that, you know, I really strongly believe that when things are going to change, they're going to change because of women. That's our role, right? And that the important thing is to always be inclusive, not just to add the 2S LGBT after, that it is part of everything that we do. Women can change the way we see things. Women can change, mothers can change how their children view things, how their children approach things, how they deal with challenge or questioning, or and to think beyond what the world is saying and influencing them. And that's a wonderful opportunity to be able to have an inclusive perspective and to spread that inclusive perspective. Often what happens is that most organizations will have a little bit of budget for equity and whatever, and then that's where the LGBT end up, or the 2S LGBT end up. And so come March, they go, oh, we have a surplus. Okay, let's do. And that's usually when we get so many requests to do things, and all within a very short period of time. And it's like, but where is it the rest of the time? You know, it has to be part of all of our discussions about, including discussions of family, discussions of, you know, the environment, discussions of politics, discussions of governance. All of that has to be part of the flow. We need to be included in all those conversations, you know, and not an afterthought.
Absolutely. I agree with what Diane is saying so much. And that's a part of why in this field of law, I really want to carve space for Two-Spirit and queer folk. I haven't really seen it yet, or I don't know, maybe there's an Indigenous queer law circle. Maybe I have to start it, who knows, but it's definitely more of spaces I want to take up and speak to. But yeah, this is great. I mean, having more panels that center us is awesome, and holding the space for us, for other people to learn from, and for, you know, people like myself to, you know, gain that voice and that competence. Other educational workshops, whether that's sexual health or just navigating identity terms, Could be like virtual spaces, even just to hang out, maybe like play games and connect. If people don't have that physical access, at least it could be online. And then one thing I thought of, because it's like we talked about Google doesn't always have all the answers. So maybe creating some kind of toolkit or a resource guide, a how-to tips and tricks for indigiqueers, like whether that's helplines, finding gender affirming care, or coming out to your family. Just something like that, I think when I was younger would have been really helpful. So if there's any like budget or support for that, like getting other people involved to get that knowledge, paying them for that knowledge, and then creating that. Yeah, I think honoring people for their time is really important. And I can't uplift Canadian Women's Foundation enough for supporting people in that way. And also, you know, shout out interpreters, shout out everyone on this team right now that's making this, you know, work for all those people that want to be here. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. You know, those words of empowerment, and again, medicine, the gift of medicine. Words are medicine, and you were able to, that really transferred through in this beautiful platform, this beautiful circle, this beautiful ceremony. When we think about that ceremony and that talking in those lodges, this is the creation of that. So miigwech say for both of your spirits showing up in this sacred way. We are going to give some time to have some questions shared, and I'm going to invite Catherine back into the space, and she will lead that with her amazing coordination ways. And I know some questions may have been in the chat, so I'm going to invite her to come back and she can ask the questions from Q&A.
Thank you so much, Angela, and thank you to all of you for all of your wisdom and to share your experience with us today. I know there was a lot of positive message in the Q&A section, people who are sharing their that they are grateful for being in this space today. There was a question directly to Summer to share, maybe Summer, if you can share it directly in the chat to everybody, the names of the authors and artists that you named earlier, because the person wanted to Google them and weren't sure of the spelling. So if you are able to share some of them in the chat, that would be wonderful.
For sure, I can do that right now.
Thank you so much, Summer. And there was a question, a very large question, but can you talk about how we discover our queer identity over the course of our lives and how it may reveal itself to us or evolve? So the question was asked in French first, so I translated it. I know it's a large question, but I don't know, Diane or Summer, if you want to answer.
I think for each person, it's very different. And if you keep yourself open to the fact that gender identity, personal identity, sexual expression or orientation is fluid, it can change over your life, over your lifetime. When Summer said something earlier about, you know, one of the comments that you would or leave with some of the youth, statement for the youth would be to take the risk associated with the new thoughts or new situations presenting. If you, within reason, so that you stay safe, which is always important, but to not close yourself off to experiences. It doesn't have to define all of you, right? It's not if you have a particular attraction to someone of the same sex that you're automatically, you know, gay or lesbian or whatever. It's like, that's, you know, a situation. It's like one drop in the water. It's not the whole thing. And people have a tendency to try and block themselves into an identity, to fit within a box that has been determined by people who don't necessarily see life as fluid. So it's important to know that you can be fluid. So it will show up at different times in your life, or it will become an experience that will go, ah, that's what I was missing, right? So I'm still discovering parts of myself and my identity at my age, and it's like constant. It's a constant change, and just welcome that fluidity rather than to try to force yourself into an identity.
I think Diane said it very well. I don't have much else to say. That, yeah, it's fluid, it's spectrum. Don't force yourself into those boxes. I think that's what I struggled with for so long. It's like, am I this? Am I that? And it's like, no, I'm just me. Like, you know, it doesn't really matter. I don't have to tell anybody. Like, that's another piece. It's for you to know, you know, it's not anyone else's business if they don't want to know, and if you don't want to share it, right? But if you want to be proud of your gender, your sexuality, then, you know, then do it, you know, teach their own. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. And we have another question. The person is asking how a non-Indigenous can be a supportive ally with Indigenous and 2S LGBTQ plus communities. Another big question.
First and foremost, look at the concept of being Indigenous, okay? Because we're Indigenous first, right? Essentially. And in this day and age, ignorance is a choice. There is no reason for us not to be able to educate ourselves about what does it mean and what has happened and what is the true history of Indigenous people on Turtle Island and around the world. And the best way to actually approach reconciliation and to become a true ally is to take the time to educate yourself, right? Within that history, you will find the history of Two-Spirit as well. So within that, by supporting Indigenous people, you are supporting us as well.
Yeah, exactly. I guess another way to say it is just to do your homework instead of burdening a queer person with all these questions. Like, you know, yeah, Google's there. I'm sure you could find it there, and show up, you know, like showing up to Pride as an ally, showing up to different workshops or events as an ally, and saying you're an ally, that you want to learn more. No one's going to exclude you from a queer space. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's particularly just for queer people, then accept that. But if it's open to everybody, to show up and learn from people, and, you know, diversify your circles, and don't ever assume anybody's gender or sexuality, in your workplace, in your organization, in anything. So if you don't know the pronouns, just use they as a placeholder. I think that's a good piece of advice. If you don't know if they're she, he, if they use all of them, just use they. I think that's a good safety placeholder. Yeah, those are just some things I think to be a good ally.
And in your workspace, if by chance you there is an opportunity, ask that there be some cultural sensitivity or Indigenous or sensitivity to Indigenous culture to be brought in. You can't just trust our history programs. You know, they have left out big pieces of information. So invite Indigenous people, you know, to come and to present the other side, and ask for it in your locations, in your spaces. And the same is true if you want to sensitize to LGBT and 2S, then you can do that as well by making that request.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who shared questions. I will let Angela close this session, and I'll come back at the very end to do all the thank yous, but Angela, you can go.
Thank you. There are so many beautiful transfers of energy that moves in spaces like this, and the connection that we all have to one another beyond gender, beyond, colors of our skin, the length of our hair, whether we're wearing a ribbon skirt or not, that it does come down to spirit. And that our spirits are aligned in a way that is so beautiful. And I invite people to open that parts of who they are up and to take up that space, and to really be mindful of how a safe space feels. You will feel the difference if somebody is inviting you to learn knowledge versus somebody who wants power over you. A teaching and knowledge will come with clear, explanation of why it moves the way it moves, why the medicine feels the way it does versus do this or do not do this. You will feel, that knowledge within and how it's activated. Any space that you go, your knowledge and your gifts will be invited if it's a safe space. There will be curiosity always by knowledge keepers, our elders, our sharers, or the people in those circles. They'll want to know about you because we are all going to be healing and learning until we leave this, this experience we call, this human experience that is guided by our spirit. We have accessibility to medicine. We always have accessibility to medicine and teachings, and it begins within. We all have accessibility to Grandmother Moon and Grandfather Sun, the land, like Summer had shared, the water, how it comes from within as well when we shed those tears and offer that space and give that back to Mother, and the heartbeat of that drum is within you, your heart is beating. And we love you. We love you. When you're feeling alone, know that we love you, that you're being held by ancestral love, by the land, by the wind, the way it moves through your hair, by the way that water touches your skin. That is confirmation that you are alive, you exist, and you matter too. Finding your place will always begin within, and spaces like this exist out there. Follow your spirit, whether it be Two Spirit or whatever it is, celebrate it. Find your people. They will activate you in a way that offers calm, love, and acceptance and curiosity even about who you are. The creation of those spaces begins with connection. And the connection will be made once, our nervous system, our body holds, and you'll feel it. You have the knowledge for that. The medicine that we shared here today, hold what feels good to you. And always remember, you don't have to hold any words or anything that doesn't belong to you, that somebody has planted onto you. That's not yours to hold, and I invite you to set it down. Visualize yourself setting it down and take what you received today and hold it in a beautiful way to nurture who you are and to be curious about who you are. And remember, Kisakitin, I love you. We love you. And we will always find places to hold space for you. Miigwech Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela, for these calm and kind words. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I'm so glad that we were able to I'm so glad that we were able to share the space with you all. Thank you to Summer. Thank you to Diane. It was a pleasure meeting you again. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Your experience is super. I know it was super touching for me, and I have a lot of things to think about, and I took a lot of notes. So thank you so much for your collaboration and your presence with us today. I wanted to thank also the interpreters who did an amazing job today to make this content available for more people. Thank you also to our tech support team. So thank you to Liz and to Melissa behind the scenes. I want to remind everyone that the recording in French and in English will be available on our YouTube channel very soon. So check this out. And I'm kindly asking you to fill out this feedback survey that will pop up on your screen when the webinar is over. We are always happy to get your feedback. So merci, thank you, miigwech. Have a nice day, and thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you, miigwech.